Hello and good evening. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati is visiting Damascus today in the first by a Lebanese premier since 2010, signalling a potential new chapter in Lebanese-Syrian relations. Meeting with Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara, Mikati aims to address shared challenges and explore avenues for cooperation between the two nations. Welcome to Think Tank. The New York Times reports that the Lebanese Prime Minister made his first official visit to Damascus to meet Syria's new government led by Ahmed al-Shara, following recent border clashes that left Lebanese soldiers wounded. This meeting marked a significant step in easing tensions and restoring diplomatic channels after years of strained relations. Mikati's visit coincided with the election of Joseph Aoun as Lebanon's new president, signalling potential political shifts in both countries. Al-Shara, facing the challenge of stabilizing a war-torn Syria, assured Mikati that efforts were underway to secure the Syrian-Lebanese border and prevent further cross-border incidents. Discussions also touched on broader security threats, in light of Syrian authorities arresting ISIS-linked suspects planning attacks in Damascus. Mikati's visit highlighted growing regional cooperation amid ongoing security challenges. Meanwhile, the Straits Times has reported that Lebanon and Syria have agreed to collaborate on securing their land and sea borders, with a focus on addressing smuggling and other border challenges. This marks the first visit by a Lebanese Prime Minister to Syria in 15 years, as we mentioned, highlighting a potential shift in bilateral relations. During the meeting, Prime Minister Mikati and Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara discussed key issues, including the controversial matter of Syrian deposits in Lebanese banks. Both nations decided to form committees to tackle these matters effectively. Lebanon's newly elected president, Joseph Aoun, sees this as a historic opportunity for meaningful dialogue and cooperation with Syria, signaling a potential thaw in long-standing tensions. Now, to help us unpack these issues and this recent visit to Damascus by Mikati, joining us from Cairo is Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist, and from Damascus, Mr. Hossam Taleb, a writer and political researcher. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for being here with us on Qnews. I'll start with you, Dr. Osman. What do you make of this visit by Mikati to Damascus?
I think that Syria's relationship with Lebanon in general is a very long-standing and very complex relationship with many contrasts, if you may, and many events that contradict one another. A very problematic relationship, and Syria has been a key player and a prime influential player inside Lebanon and Lebanese politics since the 1950s up until very recently, up until the fall of the Assad regime, to varying degrees, of course. Lebanon was subjected to a de facto Syrian military occupation for over 25 years. So you can imagine how complex the relationship is. And of course, when we speak of Lebanon, there are several Lebanons. There is the Maronite Lebanon, there is Sunni Lebanon, and there is Shiite Lebanon, all with their political agendas and their regional and ideological and international affiliations as well. So it's very hard to pinpoint the relationship between Syria and Lebanon, especially with the regime change in Syria now and with the emergence of a new government that everyone is dealing with from a very cautious standpoint, for obvious reasons, of course. However, this visit today was basically an attempt to melt the ice, especially that in the past few weeks, several border incidents have occurred members of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the de facto governing force of Syria, members of those armed group clashed with the Lebanese armed forces, and they attempted, according to Lebanese sources, to infiltrate into Lebanon. Lebanon has concerns about the lack of demarcation of the border. The border has not been entirely demarcated yet between Lebanon and Syria, so there are a bit of land border disputes in this regards, and also there is genuine concern that radical Sunni Islamists inside Lebanon might be encouraged by what happened in Syria in order to resume hostile activities. And if we remember, during the Syrian civil war, militant groups, including ISIS, attacked Lebanon and took over several border towns, and the Hezbollah and the Lebanese army managed to push them out. And this was actually the casus belli, of course, rather officially, of Hezbollah's intervention in the Syrian civil war on the side of the former regime of President Assad and his forces, on orders from Iran, of course. So you can see how complex this relationship is. I think today's step is a positive step. However, so much more needs to be done by both sides in order to restore confidence and deal with each other as peer neighbors.
Well, we'll come back to the border disputes in a few moments. But Mr. Taleb in Damascus for us, is this, in your view, a significant meeting for Syria's new leadership? And what does it mean for redefining regional alliances?
At the outset, good evening, everyone and dear viewers. In fact, this meeting is highly important at all levels between Syria and Lebanon, and today it's a state to a state, not a custody principle that was practiced by the previous regime on Lebanon, not even stemming from dealing with the categories in Lebanon. The previous regime was only dealing with Hezbollah, and today it's a state to a state relation which will reflect positively at different levels, security wise and also economy wise. For the border security committees will be formed for the demarcation of borders at the medium level during the next few months, and there will be complete demarcation of borders to stop the smuggling operations, either drugs, weapons, or different goods. Also, smuggling from Lebanon to Syria affects the Syrian economy negatively. That's why this demarcation will be very important in the current stage. And we started with these committees and the security coordination between Syria and Lebanon. There was a crossfire between some gangs and the Lebanese army a few days ago, which was addressed by the new Syrian administration. And today we will witness more coordination, security coordination to stop the smuggling and prevent it.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Osman, do you think this meeting really does signal a shift in Lebanon's foreign policy towards Syria?
So far, it does not yet. However, it may at some point signal a significant shift, because the dynamics of the relationship have changed. Before, Syria always had an upper hand in its relationship with Lebanon. Basically, Syria always treated Lebanon as this younger sibling that they need to control and dominate the whole time. And that they did actually for the better part of their bilateral relationship since independence. However, now things are different, because Syria is in shambles, and this is a fact. And Syria does not have the capacity, at least at the moment, to exercise any sort of hegemony in its immediate surrounding or anywhere even. And also, the aspirations of the government in Syria does not seem to be concerned with what goes out beyond Syria's borders in terms of strategic depth and whatnot. So at this point, they will be eager to maintain a calm relationship with one another. However, let's not forget that Hezbollah, one of the main components of the Lebanese state, basically. Not the Lebanese state per se as in government, but the composure of Lebanese society and the Lebanese political landscape and the military landscape as well, or paramilitary landscape, actually. Hezbollah is an integral part of that, and they were involved in supporting the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. So I think this will be problematic. This will cause tensions between Lebanon and Syria, at least between Hezbollah and Syria, especially with the very anti-Shiite tone of many of the supporters and the components of the factions that constitute the current ruling body inside Syria. So this might be a bit problematic. And however, I think at the moment there will be eventually a certain shift for it being a bilateral relationship where they will try to work together to overcome their differences and deal with the challenges, the common challenges they have. And I think that the election of President Joseph Aoun, the former commander-in-chief of the Lebanese Armed Forces, as president, and he is supported by many regional players such as the United States and the United States and Saudi Arabia, for example, and many other countries. He will enjoy significant support, and these countries in turn do also have influence over the government in Syria. So the United States and maybe even some Arab countries might play a role in normalizing relations between Syria and Lebanon so that they can move beyond their very problematic history, especially that Syria, for example, was allegedly implicated, according to the UN tribunal that was founded, in the assassination of former Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, for example. So as you can see, this very problematic history needs to be overcome through dialogue and pursuing common goals.
Okay, well, Mohammed Osman and Hossam Taleb, please do stay with us. We're going to return to this conversation shortly, but first we're going to watch a report on these ongoing developments.
The Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati's visit to Damascus marks a significant diplomatic step aimed at strengthening the Syrian-Lebanese relations. The timing is critical as both nations navigate transitional phases, Syria's recovery with new government and Lebanon's political shift under new leadership. Mikati's discussions with Syrian officials focus on key areas such as economic cooperation, border security, and the rehabilitation of Syrian refugees in Lebanon. Syria, under a cautious approach, seeks to reassert its relations with Lebanon while navigating international pressures, particularly Western sanctions. Despite these challenges, Syria is keen to enhance economic partnerships, especially in energy, infrastructure, and trade, offering potential relief for Lebanon's financial crisis. Lebanon's complex political landscape, marked by sectarian divisions and a fragmented government, presents obstacles to long-term reforms. Mikati's role, though limited by his caretaker status, remains pivotal in fostering closer ties with Syria while balancing local political realities and external pressures from Western powers, especially the US and France. The economic impact of this visit could help alleviate Lebanon's dire financial situation through potential joint projects. However, future cooperation depends on Lebanon's ability to maintain delicate relations with Syria, its Arab neighbors, and the West. While this visit represents an important first step toward normalizing relations, the road ahead remains challenging, with Mikati's success depending on his ability to navigate Lebanon's internal politics and Syria's ongoing recovery. This visit could open doors to enhanced collaboration, yet challenges remain in securing both domestic stability and Lebanon's international standing.
Now, going back to our discussion, I'll come to you, Mr. Taleb. A similar question to what I was just asking Dr. Osman, actually. It's about the political changes. Of course, two countries, Lebanon and Syria, are both going through political change at the moment. Syria's, of course, is massive. How do these political changes, how have they altered the new administration's approach towards Lebanon?
This change was positive. The fall of the Assad regime and electing a new president in Lebanon, which was highly positive to both Syria and Lebanon, and the changes will be in the best interest of the both countries. Um, Dealing with Lebanon now will not be headed only towards the one segment, which is Hezbollah. Today we will see an international regional cooperation relation. We saw Prime Minister Najib Mikati meeting the new leader Ahmed al-Shara. We saw the very important reception and the discussions regarding all the Lebanese Syrian concerns, the refugees, the smuggling across borders, and the common security issues. So it's a positive change for Lebanon and Syria. Today it's highly important to achieve stability for both Syria and Lebanon. We have 4,000 prisoners in the Lebanese prisons. Today we will see committees to bring those prisoners back to Syria, and those with sentences will complete those sentences in Syria, which is for the best. We have different security issues, the steel borders demarcation, the land borders demarcation. So these changes opened the floor for joint cooperation fully between the Syrian and Lebanese states. We haven't seen this since 50 years. Today we are dealing in a diplomatic frameworks and the international relations and Geneva Agreement. This is what the new Syrian administration is seeking, as Ahmed al-Shara has clearly stated that he does not want to deal with Lebanon as a custodian or interfere with the internal affairs, which will reflect positively also in Syria, that no one will interfere in the Syrian internal affairs, whether with alleviating the sanctions or building the economy without any interference. This will reflect positively on all the parties via the open-minded new administration of Syria. And this also will reflect positively on the relations with Iraq and Jordan and all the regional countries.
And Dr. Osman, we touched on the border issues earlier. Do you think this visit is going to bear fruit and they'll manage to sort this situation out?
Well, first of all, the border between Lebanon and Syria, both leaders today, the Lebanese Prime Minister, caretaker Prime Minister, and the de facto leader of Syria, because we have to get our terms straight and be very careful while using them in this regards. Both of them have agreed that they will work on demarcating the border in order to end any border disputes between both countries. And also, they decided to cooperate on border security in order to fight or confront smuggling and such illicit activities on the border. And let's not forget that Syria, over the past few years, according even to the United Nations, has become a de facto net exporter of illegal drugs, including a drug like amphetamine or Captagon and these other drugs. And it was alleged that members of the former Syrian government were involved in this scheme of drug trafficking. And there is and of course these drugs reached many countries around the region, including Lebanon, and many of them were smuggled into Lebanon and through Lebanon to other countries, through Lebanese ports, of course. So, of course, now with the new government in charge, and they did pledge to fight the Captagon trafficking inside Syria, and Lebanon is adversely affected by that. So I think they might be focusing on drug smuggling and arms smuggling as well, because many arms were smuggled through Syria to Lebanon, to certain Lebanese political factions, including Hezbollah, for example, and also because of the transfer of weapons from militant radical groups inside and personnel as well, Syria to Lebanon. And let's not forget, as I've mentioned earlier, there were many instances where violent Islamist militants or terrorists basically would launch certain minor insurrections in some Palestinian refugee camp, some border town that the Lebanese army had to deal with. And of course, many of these organizations were linked to Jabhat al-Nusra, which now has become Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the ruling body of Syria. So I think they will cooperate on that in order to calm many tensions and avoid any confrontations. And Ahmad al-Shara is not interested in creating any confrontations in Lebanon, especially, not to antagonize his new allies and patrons in the European capitals or in Washington or even in the Arab Gulf states.
And you, Mr. Taleb, what do you think about the situation when it comes to border security? Does Syria's new leadership view Lebanon as a strategic partner?
In fact, Lebanon has to be a strategic partner. For Syria, it was a follower until Hezbollah interfered in Syria, and there was a case of aggression between the Syrian people and part of the Lebanese people. The relation has to be strategic between the Lebanese state and the Syrian state, not the Syrian state to one of the Lebanese segments. We're working on improving the relationship to a strategic partnership via the coordination that took place between the new Syrian administration and the Lebanese government. And there is a Syrian welcome to the President Joseph Aoun. Also, President Aoun sent positive signals to Syria, which will work towards a strategic partnership. Syria is a destroyed state, in fact, right now. And now we see the openness of the new administration to benefit from all the neighboring countries. The stability of Syria is the stability of the entire region, and threatening this stability is a threat to the entire region. We are now working on the geopolitical factor. We have also the investment factor. For the investors, Syria is not very welcoming. We need to work on the infrastructure, on rebuilding the villages that were destroyed by the previous regime. Even the foreign affairs minister of Italy talked about building a new relation with Syria. Most states want to build a strategic partnerships with Syria. And we see the opportunity is for the neighboring country, that is Lebanon. There are historical ties connecting the two countries. We have common borders, so the strategic partnership or the strategic relation will be highly important, and it is addressed by both new administrations. We have witnessed the new changes in Lebanese recently. Hezbollah is no longer in control, and this contributes to building strategic relations. Both countries now are seeking stability and peace in the region. We listened to the speech of President Aoun speaking about the truce with Israel and prevailing peace. Also, Ahmad al-Shara spoke in the same regard. So the escalation factor in Syria and Lebanon has ended. Now we need to see the international arena dealing with Syria and Lebanon in a different way, different than the Assad reign.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll bring Dr. Osman back in now. Could you explain to us about this dialogue on Syrian deposits in Lebanese banks? Could you explain to us what that's about? And also, will it lead to practical financial agreements?
I think it's way too premature to assume that any definitive agreements regarding the Syrian deposits or any long-standing Syrian deposits in Lebanese banks or any long-standing financial or economic disagreements at this point will be resolved that instantly. I do not share the sheer optimism of Mr. Talib. I do appreciate the revolutionary euphoria everyone is experiencing in Syria. However, things are not that simple. And I do not think that these outstanding problems, for example, like the bank deposits, will be resolved in this manner simply because Lebanon is bankrupt. So they cannot give Syria back any money that Syria has deposited in its banks, at least now. Okay. When the economic crisis is resolved, eventually, maybe then they can give them their money back if this is what the Syrian government is looking for. However, it doesn't seem...
Yeah, okay, I'm going to have to interrupt you there, Dr. Osman. I apologize for that, but we're just out of time, but we definitely got your point on that situation. Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist, and Mr. Hossam Talib, a Syrian writer and political researcher. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me here on Think Tank. And that's it for today's episode, but thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.